I, 26F, lost my mom to breast cancer when I was 14. The thing that hurts the most is that she had been perfectly healthy until she wasn't. It started with what we thought was just back pain, but within 6 months, we found out it had spread everywhere. Mom fought hard, but the cancer was aggressive. I still remember her last few weeks in the hospital. She was more worried about leaving me and Dad alone than about herself. That was just the kind of person she was. Dad, 52M, took it really hard. He and Mom had been high school sweethearts, married right after college. For 2 years after Mom passed, Dad barely functioned. He went to work, came home, and that was it. I basically lived off frozen dinners and takeout during that time. I learned to do my own laundry, pack my own lunches, and generally take care of myself because Dad was lost in his grief. Don't get me wrong, he loved me and tried his best, but losing Mom broke something in him. Things started changing when I was 16. Dad started seeing a grief counselor, and slowly, he began coming back to life. He started cooking again. Mom had taught him, helped me with homework like he used to, and we even started having our Sunday movie nights again. By the time I was 18, Dad was almost back to his old self. That's when he met Stella, 46F, through some mutual friends at a neighborhood barbecue. Stella was divorced with a daughter, Kelly, 24F, from her previous marriage. Stella worked as a real estate agent and had moved to our area after her divorce for a fresh start. She seemed nice enough, always smiling, bringing over homemade cookies, asking about my college plans. Kelly was quieter but polite. She was already in pre-med at the time and super focused on her studies. Dad and Stella dated for about a year before getting married. The timing worked out well because I was heading off to college anyway. I was happy for Dad. He deserved to find happiness again. During their dating period, Stella never tried to act like a replacement mom, which I appreciated. She kept a respectful distance while still being friendly. When they got married, I was already settled in my dorm at college 3 hours away. I'd come home for holidays and some weekends, and things were okay. Stella had moved into our house with Kelly, who was home during her breaks too. We were civil but never close, more like friendly acquaintances than family. I was fine with that arrangement. The thing about Mom's jewelry is that it wasn't just regular jewelry. It was a family heirloom set passed down from her grandmother. The main set includes a stunning gold necklace with rubies and diamonds, matching earrings, and a bracelet. The craftsmanship is incredible. They don't make pieces like that anymore. Mom used to tell me stories about how her grandmother wore it at her wedding, then her mother, and finally Mom. She would let me try it on sometimes when I was little, promising it would be mine one day. After Mom passed, Dad packed away most of her stuff but kept her jewelry in our family safe. He couldn't bear to look at her clothes and other personal items, but the jewelry was different. It was meant to stay in the family. Over the years, I'd occasionally look at the pieces, remembering Mom wearing them at special occasions. Last month, I got engaged to my boyfriend Jake, 28M. We've been together for 3 years, and he's amazing. He even asked Dad for his blessing before proposing, which meant a lot to both of us. We're planning a spring wedding next year, and naturally, I started thinking about Mom's jewelry. I always knew I wanted to wear it at my wedding. It was what Mom would have wanted. Last week, I visited Dad to talk about wedding preparations. Stella was there too, which was fine. We were discussing venues and dates when I brought up Mom's jewelry. The moment I mentioned it, the atmosphere in the room changed. Stella got this weird look on her face, and Dad suddenly became very interested in his coffee cup. That's when Dad dropped the bomb. Stella had been planning to give the jewelry to Kelly as a graduation present when she finishes medical school this year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stella jumped in before I could respond, saying how Kelly had always admired the set and how meaningful it would be for her to have something special from the family since she didn't have any heirlooms from her dad's side. I lost it. I told them this was my mom's jewelry, meant specifically for me. Stella got defensive and said that after 8 years of marriage, she had as much right to family heirlooms as anyone else. She said Kelly deserved something special for her achievement, and this would make her feel more like a real part of the family. The argument got heated. I pointed out that Kelly wasn't even Dad's biological daughter and had no claim to my mom's family jewelry. Stella started crying, saying I was cruel to bring up biology and that I never accepted them as real family. Dad got angry at me for making Stella cry and told me to leave and cool down. I did leave, but I was furious. I called Dad later that evening and reminded him that Mom had specifically wanted me to have that jewelry. He acknowledged remembering that but said he had to consider everyone's feelings now. When I accused him of betraying Mom's wishes, he got defensive and said the jewelry legally belonged to him now and he could do whatever he wanted with it. I told him fine, but he shouldn't expect me at family gatherings anymore if he gives away my mom's jewelry to Kelly. He called me immature and dramatic. Now I'm staying at Jake's place, ignoring Dad's texts about talking things out. Stella has been posting passive-aggressive comments on Facebook about ungrateful stepdaughters who never gave her a chance, and Kelly texted me saying I'm just jealous because she's more successful than me. Jake thinks I'm completely right to stand my ground, but some of my friends say I'm being too harsh and should try to compromise. I don't see how I can compromise on this. It's my mom's jewelry, meant for me. Stella and Kelly have been in our lives for just 8 years, and they're trying to take away one of the few tangible connections I have left to Mom. Ida for refusing to let this go? Update 1, it's been 3 weeks since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who commented and offered support. After reading the comments, I decided to reach out to my mom's sister, Aunt Lisa. We've always been close but drifted apart somewhat after Dad married Stella. Stella never seemed comfortable when Mom's family visited, so the visits became less frequent over the years. When I called Aunt Lisa and told her what was happening, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "You don't know the whole story about the jewelry, do you?" She told me to wait and drove 3 hours to meet me in person. Aunt Lisa arrived with an old leather photo album and a stack of letters. She explained that the jewelry wasn't just a family heirloom, it was part of a formal tradition. My maternal grandmother had received the set from her mother, and when Mom married Dad, grandmother officially passed it to her with one condition: it must go to her daughter on her wedding day. This was a tradition that went back 4 generations in our family. Aunt Lisa showed me photos I'd never seen before, pictures of grandmother presenting Mom with the jewelry at her wedding. In one photo, Mom was crying as grandmother fastened the necklace around her neck. But the real proof was in the letters. Aunt Lisa had found a letter my grandmother had written to Mom about the tradition. The letter explicitly stated that the jewelry was meant for her granddaughter, me. I made copies of everything and went to confront Dad. I texted him saying we needed to talk and that I had important information about Mom's jewelry. He agreed to meet at the house. When I arrived, I found not just Dad and Stella, but Kelly too. Stella had this smug look like she thought this was going to be me apologizing. I laid out everything on the dining room table: the photos, the letters, the family history. Dad's face changed as he looked at the photos. I could tell he remembered that day. Stella tried to dismiss it, saying old traditions didn't matter anymore, but then she saw the letter. Her face went from dismissive to angry as she read grandmother's explicit wishes about her granddaughter inheriting the jewelry. That's when something unexpected happened. Kelly, who had been quiet until then, suddenly burst into tears and ran upstairs. Stella went after her, but not before giving me a look that could freeze hell. Dad just sat there, staring at the wedding photos. After a long silence, Dad finally spoke. He admitted he remembered grandmother giving Mom the jewelry. He remembered the tradition and the promise. When I asked why he had agreed to give it to Kelly, he looked ashamed. He said Stella had been pushing the idea for months, saying Kelly needed something special to make her feel like a real part of the family. He said he just wanted everyone to be happy and thought maybe the tradition didn't matter as much anymore. I was processing this when Kelly came back downstairs, her eyes red from crying. Stella tried to stop her, but Kelly had something to say. She admitted she never actually wanted the jewelry. She told us how Stella had been telling her for months that she deserved it more than me because she was more accomplished, being in medical school while I only had a regular office job. Stella had convinced her that accepting the jewelry would prove she was truly part of Dad's family. Stella tried to interrupt, but Kelly kept going. She said she felt guilty every time Stella brought it up, but was afraid to disagree with her mom. Kelly said she knew how much the jewelry meant to me and she never wanted to take it. She apologized for her mean text about me being jealous of her success, saying Stella had convinced her I was just being difficult. This led to a massive fight between Stella and Dad. Stella started screaming about how she was sick of living in Mom's shadow. She said that everything in the house was about preserving Mom's memory and nothing was ever about her new family. She accused Dad of never really letting Mom go and said it wasn't fair that Kelly would always be second best to me. Dad finally snapped. He told Stella she was being manipulative and cruel. He said she couldn't erase Mom's memory or replace me with Kelly, and he was wrong to ever let her try. He said the jewelry was going to me, as it should have been all along. Stella lost it. She called us all ungrateful and said she was tired of competing with a dead woman for her husband's love. She grabbed Kelly's arm and tried to make her leave with her, but Kelly pulled away. Stella stormed out alone, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Dad immediately went to the safe and got out the jewelry set. He handed it to me with tears in his eyes, apologizing for almost breaking his promise to Mom and grandmother. Kelly hugged me and apologized again, saying she hoped we could move past this. Stella has been staying at her sister's place since then. She's not responding to Dad's calls. Kelly is still at the house but planning to move into her own place soon. Dad seems lost, Like he doesn't know how he let things get so out of hand. I have the jewelry now, safely stored at my place. Jake suggested we get a secure safe for it. Looking at it now, I can almost feel the history of all the women in my family who wore it before me. I know Mom would be happy it's with me, where it belongs. Update 2. 2 months have passed since my last update. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, they did. Last week, Kelly asked to meet me for coffee. She seemed nervous and kept checking her phone, making sure Stella wasn't tracking her location. Kelly revealed something that made my blood run cold. She discovered that Stella had been secretly selling off Mom's jewelry pieces from the safe for the past 3 years. She'd replace each piece with a fake replica that looked almost identical to the untrained eye. Kelly found out by accident when she overheard Stella on the phone with a jeweler, discussing the price for another piece. According to Kelly, it started when her medical school tuition increased. Her dad, Stella's ex, had promised to help but backed out at the last minute. Instead of telling Dad about the financial problems, Stella started looking through Mom's jewelry collection. She found a jeweler who specialized in vintage pieces and began selling them one by one. Kelly showed me pictures she'd secretly taken of Stella's text conversations with the jeweler. The text showed Stella had sold at least 12 pieces over the years. Each time, she'd buy a replica to replace the original, so no one would notice. She'd even taken photos of the original pieces to ensure the replicas looked identical. I felt sick. These weren't just valuable pieces, they were memories. Each piece had a story. The pearl earrings Mom wore to my first piano recital, the gold bracelet she got for her 30th birthday, the emerald pendant Dad gave her on their 15th anniversary, all gone. I drove straight to Dad's house. He was alone, as Stella was still staying at her sister's place after our last confrontation. When I told him what Kelly had revealed, he didn't believe it at first. He went to check the safe, taking each piece out carefully. Dad used to own a jewelry store before retiring, so he knew what to look for. Within minutes, he identified several fakes. The gold wasn't real, the stones were cubic zirconia, and the craftsmanship was modern, not vintage. His hands were shaking as he examined each piece. We called Stella immediately. She tried denying it at first, but when Dad mentioned getting the pieces professionally appraised, she broke down. She admitted everything. She'd sold almost all of Mom's jewelry except for the main set I had wanted for my wedding. That one was too well known in the family to replace without someone noticing. Stella tried justifying her actions. She said Kelly's education was more important than jewelry sitting in a safe. She claimed she was planning to replace the pieces with real ones once Kelly finished medical school and started earning. She even tried to blame Kelly's dad for backing out of paying for medical school. Dad was devastated. It wasn't just about the monetary value, those pieces were some of his last connections to Mom. Each one represented a special moment in their life together. Finding out that Stella had sold them and replaced them with fakes felt like losing Mom all over again. When Stella realized we'd found out through Kelly, she became furious. She called Kelly ungrateful and accused her of betraying her own mother. She said Kelly would never have gotten through medical school without her sacrifices. Kelly broke down crying, saying she never asked her mom to sell stolen jewelry for her education. She would have taken out loans if she'd known. Dad told Stella to leave and not come back. He said he needed time to think about everything. Stella tried to shift blame, saying she only did it because Dad never offered to help with Kelly's education. She said if he had treated Kelly like a real daughter, she wouldn't have had to resort to selling the jewelry. That was the last straw for Dad. He told her to get out and said his lawyer would be in touch. Stella left, but not before warning Kelly that she would regret choosing us over her own mother. Dad's staying with me now while he figures out what to do next. We're trying to track down some of the pieces through the jeweler's records, but most were sold to private collectors. The few we found our way out of our price range to buy back. Kelly's been amazing through all this. She offered to help pay to replace some of the jewelry once she finishes her residency, even though none of this was her fault. She's cut off contact with Stella and is staying with a friend until she can find her own place. The whole situation is such a mess. Not only did Stella try to take my wedding jewelry, but she'd been stealing and selling Mom's other pieces all along. Every time I think about those precious memories being sold to strangers, it breaks my heart all over again. Update 3. It's been 6 months since everything blew up, and I finally feel ready to share this last update. A lot has happened. Dad filed for divorce from Stella after discovering the full extent of what she'd done. During the divorce proceedings, we found out she hadn't just been selling Mom's jewelry, she'd been taking other valuable items from our house too. Dad's lawyer discovered Stella had sold antique silverware that had belonged to my great-grandmother, some of Mom's designer purses, and even Dad's collection of rare coins he'd inherited from his father. In total, she'd made almost $50,000 from selling everything over the years. She'd been careful to only take things that weren't used regularly, so we wouldn't notice them missing. The divorce has been messy. Stella tried claiming she had a right to half of everything since they were married, but Dad's lawyer found evidence that she'd been selling these items before they even got married. She'd actually started going through Mom's things while she and Dad were still dating, making note of valuable pieces she could sell later. We managed to track down 3 pieces of Mom's jewelry through the jeweler's records. One piece, a sapphire pendant Dad gave Mom on their 10th anniversary, was still with the original buyer. When they heard our story, they agreed to sell it back to us at the price they paid. Dad bought it immediately, even though it was expensive. He said seeing me wear it at my wedding would be worth every penny. Kelly has completely cut ties with Stella. She's living with her dad now and focusing on her medical residency. She sent me a long email explaining how sorry she was for not telling us sooner about Stella's stealing. She said she'd suspected something was wrong for a while but couldn't bring herself to believe her mom would do something so terrible. I assured her none of us blame her. Stella tried to apologize to both me and Dad. She sent long text messages about how she only did it for Kelly's future, how she felt trapped by financial pressure, and how she always planned to replace everything eventually. Neither Dad nor I responded. Some things can't be fixed with apologies. The divorce should be final next month. Dad's lawyer is still working on getting Stella to pay restitution for the stolen items, but we don't expect to see much of that money. Stella's been claiming she's broke from legal fees and helping Kelly with school, even though Kelly says she hasn't received any money from her mom in months. As for my wedding plans, they're back on track. I'll be wearing Mom's jewelry set, the one piece Stella didn't manage to sell, along with the sapphire pendant Dad recovered. Aunt Lisa will be walking me down the aisle with Dad. She's been amazing through all of this, helping Dad cope and sharing more stories about Mom with me. Kelly sent her congratulations but won't be attending the wedding. She says it's still too painful, and she needs time to process everything that happened. I understand completely, this whole situation has been traumatic for her too. Dad is doing better now. He's seeing a counselor to deal with the betrayal and has joined a divorce support group. He says he's done with dating for a while and wants to focus on rebuilding our family, just him and me, like it was before Stella came along. Looking back, I'm grateful I stood my ground about Mom's jewelry. If I hadn't, we might never have discovered what Stella was doing. Some of Mom's pieces are gone forever, but at least we saved what we could. More importantly, we exposed Stella's true nature before she could take anything else from us. My wedding is in 3 weeks. When I walk down the aisle wearing Mom's jewelry, I know she'll be with me in spirit. That's something Stella could never take away, no matter how hard she tried.